Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy week to just spend a little bit of time with the EdFi Alliance as we talk a little bit about data and the role that data is going to play in stemming learning loss, especially as we start winding down this crazy school year and start looking ahead into school year 21-22. It's just around the corner. I know as a mom, I have 3 school-age kids. I've already planned our entire summer. Countdown for the end of school parties has begun. My kids are reminding me daily. But we are all going to be facing some big challenges as we get back to the classroom in this next school year to see, and many school districts are handling it very differently to see, is it looking like back to normal? Is it some sort of hybrid? Is it still some work online? There's a lot that different districts and different states are handling it differently. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's webinar. A couple things. My name is Caroline Kazmersky. I am the Director of Communications for the EdFi Alliance. This is a little bit of an old slide. I might have a few more wrinkles now since COVID. And I've been at EdFi for now almost 4 years, maybe even a little bit longer. So a couple just housekeeping notes about today's webinar. We are recording this webinar. We will get a list of the attendees and all the people that registered. And so rest assured, we'll send you the recording. So if you missed anything or you didn't take notes quick enough, or even if you would like to send this to someone else that you know needs to hear this information, we would love for you to do that. So we'll be sending the recording, and we will also have it up on our website, edfi.org. We cannot hear you or see you. You can hear us and see us, but we can't hear you or see you. So just in case you're still in your yoga pants, it's totally fine. No judgment, and we can't see. But if you would like to ask us a question, which we are wanting you to do so, please put that into the Q&A or into the chat feature of the WebEx interface. Myself, as well as my colleague Lauren and Sean and I will all be monitoring the Q&A. And if there's anything that you wanted to ask right away, I can jump in and ask that in real time. So we'd love for this to be an interactive webinar. So with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Sean Casey.
Thanks very much, Caroline. Appreciate it. And thank you all for making time. I know you have 1,000 things on your plates anyway, but especially this time of year as you're wrapping up your school year, probably starting to get your summer projects ready to hit the ground running as soon as the school year wraps, and thinking about back to school as well. What we're going to focus on is a very practical session today, and we really want to put these data tools right in your hands to tackle these different parts of this learning loss challenge that a lot of us are working through, struggling with, worried about for our learners and for our kids. But to back up for a moment, what EdFi does, what we care about, what our mission is that orients all of our work is we are solely focused on securely and seamlessly connecting data from across these different systems that we use in our school districts, in all of our educational agencies to support learners and educators, right? There's a whole bunch of point solutions that you all have implemented to solve a problem in your environment for your learners. And now there's a sea of those tools, right? And they have valuable data in them, but it may be siloed and it may be hard to get to. What we're going to focus on today is 4 ways that are backed up by these rapid deployment data tools that have come out of successful field implementations, meaning these are tried, these are tested. We think that they're very useful and usable, and we package them up for your use to help you tackle the different parts of this learning loss challenge that our field has really been reeling from and struggling with through the pandemic. So just for a moment of context, this is a multi-dimensional problem, as you know. I'm probably telling you something that you know at least as well as I do, because you're on the front lines of this with your learners and your families you support and your educators and administrators. Because this is multi-dimensional and it's complex and there's a lot of parts to it, we need multi-dimensional approaches. But one way that we've found a lot of success at EdFi with all the school districts that we work with across the country is pinpointing solutions and work very targeted, what we would call a use case. You might just call it a priority, an educational job to be done. But these targeted solutions that tackle one specific part of this challenge, and then we bring them together, right? And we use multiple points of data. So think about authentic assessment as really painting that whole picture of your learners from multiple ways of assessing their learning, their outcomes, their successes and their challenges, right? We need that full picture of our learners to be able to really support them well and have a comprehensive understanding of how they're doing and what kind of help they need. So that's what this session is going to be about today. I'm going to set up for you these 4 kind of problem statements, which are guided by an essential question, like a question that we need to understand and answer, or that we want to be able to answer about our learners, and then lead you into the tool that helps you solve for and answer that question. So the first part of this first dimension of this multidimensional challenge that I was just describing is, are my learners getting their instructional time, or are they missing instructional time to the point where it becomes significant and it becomes a blocker for their learning, right? What we know from our field implementations and this great big growing community of folks that are utilizing EdFi and interoperable data to be able to serve learners and educators is that absences have immediate near-term consequences, right? Like you miss that lesson, you miss that test, you miss some important instructional activity, and now your workload has increased as a learner and probably as an educator to support the learner too, right? Because you've got to do the makeup work, right? And the current work that's expected. So there's definitely this treadmill effect for the 180 school days that all of our kiddos are in a school year, and how much we're trying to squeeze out of that instructional time with them. The double whammy problem of missing instructional time is that it's not just near-term and immediate challenges that result from it. There are really serious long-term consequences that come from missing instructional time, and it becomes very much a compounding problem. Chronic absenteeism is the definition for this level of significant enough loss of instructional time, and we're usually talking about when you've missed 10% or more of your instructional days or class periods over the course of a school year. And that's for any reason. That's whether medical illness, being out for an athletic event, excused, unexcused, a suspension, it doesn't matter. Any of those reasons really accumulate into this threshold of missing 10% or more of your instructional time for a course in a school year means that you really are starting to see trend lines in challenging directions for learners that impact things like early learning milestones, on track to graduate, the increased risk of dropping out in middle and high school. So there's real serious long-term consequences that come from this short-term immediate problem. So hence, I want to introduce you to the Chronic Absenteeism Starter Kit, which we have packaged up and assembled a tool for you to use that's based on how other school districts around the country have solved for this challenge of knowing if my students are trending toward this level, this 10% threshold of chronic absenteeism, utilizing real-time data and putting it into a digestible way, a digestible format for folks like principals, assistant principals, and counselors especially, for them to be able to know not just are my kids chronically absent or have they hit that threshold, but more importantly, are they trending toward that, right? Can I course correct early and solve that issue before it gets to be a problem with the right kind of intervention? So what we've built is, and I'm going to jump over to show you this this
John,
user.
I'll just add to this, just some real life anecdotes on this one. I know your girls are one in college, one in high school. I've got elementary and middle. And this year has, and I'm sure all the other parents on the line as well, this has been such a challenge. I'm going to confess, I've gotten the mean note from my school district that's like, your kid has missed school. And it's because, he's doing some online, some in the classroom. It's so hard to tell. And I think we are going to be able to make it up and figure out his work, and my middle schooler in particular, but it is a major challenge. And this year in particular, in past years, it wasn't an issue for our family, although I know that that can be challenge for lots of folks. But this year in particular has been terrible. And all the other moms and I, we just sit around, we're like, well, everyone's going to be in the same boat starting next year. So hopefully it'll all even out in the end. And you got to just try your best. But having
Mhm.
some data to support that anecdotally, I think is going to be really important.
For sure. That's a really good point. There's a baseline, a foundation that's important for all of us to understand, right? If you're not getting access to enough instructional time, you will not have access to all of the resources that you need as a learner to be able to learn and master the content. That is the goal for that class or for your time in that class that year. So really important point. So what I'm going to show you, and this is on this first of these four problem solution statements and tools that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to walk you through the convention that we're utilizing for a number of these tools that we're putting in your hands. We won't spend the same amount of time on all four of them, but it's just important probably to learn the convention, because then you'll know what to expect when you show up to make use of whichever one of these speaks to you as a priority to tackle first. So I jumped over to our website, and where I've gone is, so edfi.org, it's ed-fi.org is our website. And I'm in the How to Use EdFi menu right here. And you can see there are a lot of different constituencies in our EdFi community. We're speaking with school districts today, right, through our CoSN relationship. We work very closely with CoSN and with school districts in the CoSN network as well. And I'm on the first of these solution sets around addressing chronic absenteeism in this How to Use EdFi under the school districts menu. And so what you'll see is, you'll see content that we wrote for you, whether you are a technical leader, right? An IT manager or someone on the technology staff, or if you're an instructional leader, meaning you are working in a school district outside of a technology department. You might be central office. Maybe you have a role that's in attendance for the district, or maybe you're in research and evaluation for your district, or you name it, curriculum and instruction, teaching and learning department. We wrote this content for both of those sets of roles: technology staff and leadership, instructional staff and leadership, because that's where this work can be most impactful, is when you team together and really bring both sides of the house together. And so what we've created is some context for you about the size and shape of this challenge, why it's significant, and how many kids it affects. We've got some testimonials for you of folks that have successfully implemented this in the field and have informed these solutions that we've packaged up and pulled together for your use. And then something that you'll find very useful, I hope, I think you will, and I hope you will, and that is common questions before you get started. So things like, I'm under a budget, my budget's even tighter this year, how much will this cost? Well, we're a nonprofit, we're not a vendor, we are backed by philanthropic dollars, and so all of these things that I'm showing you are actually available to you at no cost. How much time will this take? What district systems will be involved? This is different per solution that I'm going to show you today, but this is a convention that you can expect on all of these systems, including which roles in your district would be recommended to be involved and what kinds of technology you'll need. Okay. The last thing that you'll see that I'll call out in this session is it also gives you an overview of the steps, this implementation guidance that we've put together to give you the fastest path to be able to implement this in your own environment. And you can go through a little kind of a slider bar here that shows you and calls out the steps that you'll go through and a short description of what's involved in that step, so that you have an understanding from beginning to end, at least at a high level. What is it that I'm getting into? What is it I'm going to be able to do? What is it that my staff will be expected to be able to know how to do and to be able to support? We tried to surface all of that for you in one user journey that you can share with other folks, that you can use with your technology team, that you can route to another person in case you're interested in this, but you really need a colleague to come look at this with you and put another set of eyes on it, right? And so once you go through this, and hit this button of get the starter kit, what it does is it triggers you to create a community account if you haven't done that yet with EdFi. That's the same thing that you get when you go up here to this get started button up in the upper right corner of our site, right? It's just a little information form, and this provisions you into a whole lot of community resources and tools that we make available for all of our community members to just sort of put all of the EdFi resources and assets at your fingertips. Once you decide, yes, I want to tackle this starter kit, you request it, you make your community account, what it'll do is you'll have an email follow-up that routes you to what we call tech docs. I'm just going to spend a short moment on this to highlight it for you. We won't spend much time in here because there's a lot of depth in here that you'll see once you start down this path. But what tech docs is a wiki. Tech docs is a great big wiki that's organized around different kinds of topics that are of interest to you. This one is all about how to implement the chronic absenteeism starter kit. And so the convention that I want to call out for you here is we give you a visual right off the bat of this data tool that you're going to have in your hands as you go through this starter kit. This shows you the kinds of enrollment information, absenteeism information, kids that are trending towards being chronically absent versus the ones that are already actually at that threshold and may need some certain kinds of intervention support. And then there's three things here that we hope are very useful to you. One is there's a hosted demo, a clickable prototype demo that you can point and click. It's got sample data in it so that you can just look at it right off the bat, see what the tool is and does, use the different data visualization tools that are available in there. And then we get you into what's called a quick start. And this is where you actually launch in your environment, in your school district, a sample app with sample data that you can go share with cabinet. You can go share with a principal. You can use that internally to help spread the vision of look what we can solve with data and get buy-in from other folks about, yes, I need that. I am trying to solve that problem. Please implement this tool so that I can support my learners this way. And that's what the third part of this kit does. This is the setup guide where you basically take that sample app with sample data and you turn it into your district's application. You connect your data from your student information system, and now you've got your own test environment with your own kids in it that you can start to look at and to utilize and plan your rollout for your end users. So hopefully that makes sense. That's the convention that we've tried to follow with these with the content that we've wrapped around for these different data tool solutions that I'm going to show you today.
Sean, real quick before you click off of this page, can you talk a little bit about the cost and the time that someone might have to consider when going to try and solve this or try and use this data to solve chronic absenteeism?
Sure. Yeah, again, because this is work of our nonprofit, the EdFi Alliance is a subsidiary of the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. All of this work is being provided to folks in the field who solve this chronic absenteeism problem at no cost to you. You will be implementing this in your environment on your database server and your web server. So you may have some licensing of your own environment to factor in, just like you would for any other application that you stand up. But everything that I'm showing you that EdFi has packaged up and pulled together for you is available at no cost. The time question, we've estimated the time for each of these different data tools that I'm showing you today to where the demonstration guide is available to you really in no time. That's just a hosted application that you can use right off the bat. The quick start guide is intended to really be something that within about an hour or less, you can stand up and use in your environment, the sample app with sample data. And then the setup guide where you make it your own, you basically implement this fully in your own environment, just like you would another application that the district intends to roll out, and where you connect your student information system to it and get your data flowing. So essentially like turn it from a sample app into your district's application now. That can range anywhere from a couple of hours to a couple of days to a week. It really depends on how ready you are and how ready your source system vendor is. Those are really the two primary variables. And so it can be as quick as a few hours. but it can also be something more like on the order of a few days or a week or something like that to get those pieces those pieces nailed down. And we can help you with it. We've got support information called out along the way for you in case some of those things aren't real clear.
So you just mentioned your source system vendor.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what, like if I was a school district and I was going to go ahead and set this up, what would I need to do to communicate with my vendors about what they need to do to get me the information that I need to feed into this so I can see what I want to see from the data?
Yeah. Why don't I just show you instead of talking about it? Just show it, Sean. If we go into the setup guide, again, this is the part of this solution where you make it your own, right? You're really standing this up in your own environment and connecting your systems to it. What we've got is a configure. In this case, you only need one source system to power this data tool, and it's your student information system. And so we've got this section right here that I'm highlighting called Configure Your Student Information System. And we have a number of steps for you to go through where you can choose your own adventure based on what fits your case. If you have a student information system that already supports EdFi, terrific, you're off to the races. If you're a version behind, like your vendor supports it, but you've got to do an upgrade in place, we've got some guidance for you there. If your vendor hasn't yet provided these capabilities to you and you need to make the ask, we've got information to support you there as well, right? Called out in these sidebars, and including help that we can give you as well. Okay, so that's the first part of the question is, how do I get my source system that'll be the source of the data for this data tool connected up? The second thing is, and this is explained in the process of going through this kit, we have built out something called a vendor developer guide, which is the set of requirements for a data providing vendor, like your student information system in this case, to be able to know exactly what to do to support this kit in case EdFi is a new request for them or something that they haven't done before. And this is intended to be put in your hands to help you convey your requirement that you need your data to be interoperable because you're trying to use it for this purpose of solving chronic absenteeism. And that's a really direct way and a clear, consistent way to equip you to go make that ask of your vendor. Okay, let's jump over to our next solution, our next problem, and then our next solution. See what I did there? I always jump ahead of the solution. Guilty. So here's problem statement number 2. My essential question is, are my remote and blended learners participating and engaging? So, we started with, first of all, are they present, right? That's what chronic absenteeism was all about, is are they present or not? This next question is kind of moving up the value stack a little bit, if you think about it, which is, okay, my kids are present. Are they participating, right? Are they participating and engaging, especially given that as a educator now, I am dividing my attentions across multiple instructional modalities. I've got some in-person learners, probably. I've got some remote learners, probably. I've got some synchronous learners, and I maybe have some asynchronous learners. And I probably have some kids that are some blend or hybrid of those, or that are just changing. They're moving from one to another because their circumstances need them to, right? So as an instructor, as an educator, my job got a lot more complicated this past year, right? Of supporting kids and differentiating across all of these different modalities. So with my remote and blended learners, just how do I get visibility into whether they're participating? Are they participating enough? Is their pace adequate to where I can support them without them falling behind my in-person kids, right? There's all of these questions, challenging questions for educators about how to support them. So in order to support these kiddos and ultimately their success, right? We want to move beyond just participation into like real engagement. Are the kids really diving deep, and are they really successful? And are we really clear on what their needs are to be able to intervene at the right time and in the right way? We worked with our community this past year to build out something that we call the LMS toolkit, the Learning Management System toolkit, that I'm going to show you right here is available. And this is again in that TechDocs wiki that I mentioned before. If you go to TechDocs, TechDocs, .edfi.org, that's our TechDocs site. And we're in the EdFi tools area in the LMS toolkit. What this does is this gives you a set of extractors that for our community, they asked us to focus on Google Classroom, Canvas, and Schoology as the big three LMSs that were most prevalent and most important for the majority of our community members. And so we built this set of extractors that basically queries those systems, those different LMSs, whichever one you use, whichever one of those three you use, and it pulls student activity and assignment data out of those systems so that you can use it alongside the other information that you've got on your learners, right? Like their grades or like their assessments or like the other kinds of information that we can help you unlock from different kinds of source systems, like we just looked at with chronic absenteeism a moment ago. And so instead of looking at just this LMS data in a silo, now think about it being connected to the other information that you know about your kids, right? And so this kit is a little different than the last one. This is just a set of extractors that you can go in and use whichever one is appropriate for the tool that you use, and use it to solve for these certain kinds of priority use cases, right? Like assessing the level of student engagement in coursework, because it's all about student assignments and student assignment submissions, right? And then being able to share the data visualizations and the analytics that community members come up with that are valuable there that others can use. And so this is a set of data tools that is becoming richer all the time. As a matter of fact, we have a new release of this tool that's coming out on Thursday, the 13th. And so be on the lookout for that. And if you aren't signed up for the EdFi newsletter yet, that's a really good way to stay up to date on new releases as they come out, so that you can go put your hands on the latest and greatest as it's available. And Caroline, I don't know if you'd want to mention anything about newsletters or just the different kinds of communication methods for people to find out about those new releases.
Yeah, newsletters are going to be the best. You can go to edfi.org and just right up in under news, you can go and sign up for the newsletter. Yep. Right there, sign up for EdFi News. Super simple. Let me ask you a question, Sean, with regard to the LMS toolkit. What are school districts doing now to get this information? And recognizing that there's probably a whole gambit of solutions or workarounds or whatever to get at this data and this information. What's the most common workaround, and what's the most common thing that you are seeing in the field of how people are trying to mine this data?
Yeah, I mean, you described it well. It's a gamut of workarounds and different kinds of solutions. Here's what we found. This is a way to answer your question. Let me know if you want to kind of add to this. Here's what we found. In the last year, since we learned that the pandemic was with us for a while, right? So this is a little over a year ago now. Once we learned that was with us for a while, we started this initiative called Fix It Fridays, which was a community responsive, let's come together every Friday afternoon with a developer team and basically work with the community directly to try to solve emerging and pressing data problems that had seemingly arisen overnight because of the situation we were in. This that I'm showing you, this LMS toolkit, is one of the outputs of that work. This was working with community members that were kind of struggling and all over the place with these workarounds, like Caroline just described really well, to basically come together and say, what are some things we can do together so we don't have to repeat this work, with a whole series of one-off initiatives. what can we do together that brings us more value and lightens the load, because all of our plates got full so quickly with all the new systems that we had to implement, LMSs and other instructional systems. And so this LMS toolkit actually is the convergence of practice that we tried to help pull together across community members to get out of that situation of having all of the one-offs and all of the workarounds. And it's not perfect, but I will say it's a very, like, it's almost like a center of gravity. It is a thing that has brought a lot of different school districts around the country to the table to say, that's a great starting point for me. That's a thing that I am clear on how and why I want to measure student assignment submissions, because that's very much like what we used to do in the classroom. This is just happening from a home, from a living room, online, but it's a great place for people to kind of anchor some shared understanding around. Okay, let's move on to problem and essential question number 3. And this is a little different. This is not directly about learners. This is about the supporting cast of those learners and how we support the home to school connection. This is, are my learners' families and caregivers involved and aware in reinforcing the success or the needs of those learners, right? How do we engage with caregivers? How do we engage with households and families in order to help them know what they need to know to support their kids, right? So you all know this at least as well as I do, but like this past year, that homeschool connection probably has never been as important as it is now. That's always been a thing that's mattered, but I can't imagine this past year something that was more important than that healthy connection between the teacher and the parent or the caregiver, the school and the family and the household, right? Parents and caregivers, though, also have a lot on their plates. They are working. They may be working from home. They may be juggling all of these variables in their own professional lives and have remote learners and kiddos that they're trying to support in all the ways that they can. But it's complex, right? They maybe have different kinds of portals or different sorts of ways to interact with the school system, but it may not bring it all together into one view, and it may not be real intuitive. You may also have parents who speak a second language, and English may not be their first language, or any number of other barriers, access issues, technology access issues. There's a lot of things that get in the way of this thing happening on its own automatically. Right? Which is why we packaged up this solution that we call the Family Engagement Starter Kit. And this is all about surfacing. Let me show you. This is all about surfacing for parents and caregivers the information that helps them understand at a glance in an intuitive way in their home language how their students are doing. What are the significant things that need their attention? What needs their attention right now? And what are the longer term trends that may matter to them, right? And so same kind of convention that we followed with chronic absenteeism. You've got this definition of why this is a priority, some facts and figures from the field that really call out what an impact this can have if you make progress on strengthening these relationships with parents and with caregivers, and then some information about this family engagement portal tool and who's been successful with it out in the field, which in this case is a charter school system called Yes Prep in the Houston area has done fantastic work with it, among others in the field. And then our common questions to know as you get started, right? That same kind of convention that we followed before. If we go into, let's say you go through that user kit or that user journey, I mean, and you request that kit. Remember this convention that we talked about earlier with chronic absenteeism? You get your demonstration guide, you get your quick start, you get your instructions for how to make this your own, right? And I'll bring you just a little screenshot that you can get started with here. You have this portal that you log into. You can go in as a parent or a guardian. You can go in as a teacher or a student or a principal, right? And then we've got things to support you as you go through this. Like from a parent perspective, when you log in, here's some screenshots that show you the information on your students in your household, their absences, their course grades, whether there's any behavior issues or assignments that are missing, and those sorts of things, right? Again, this is all about synthesizing information for parents to inform them, involve them, but also simplify the experience for them so they get focused on the impactful things.
I really wish my school district had this. We have a parent portal, but you have, as a parent, you have to like almost take a course just to learn how to do the parent portal and like navigate. Obviously, through pandemic, I've become super proficient at it, but it's not easy. Like, doesn't put the important things right in front of you,
Yeah.
like this one does. So that's really powerful. And I think
Mhm.
you're about to get to the part where it can be in many different languages, which
Yeah.
also in our area, that's super important. I'm sure around the country, also extremely important. It's
Mhm.
really neat.
Oh, I can tell you, we're in Austin, and there are probably a number of different home languages spoken in AISD, Caroline. But I can tell you, like uh, in my former life, a couple of school districts ago, one of my old CIO jobs, I still remember we had 67 home languages spoken. This was up on the North Shore of Chicago, and diversity. I mean, it was amazing. Like I learned so much there from all these different cultures and religions and such, but the language challenges were real, right? That 67
Mhm.
different home languages. So yes, that kind of support is baked right into this tool to just remove one more barrier, one more obstacle for student
Yeah.
success and for parent and caregiver involvement.
So Sean, and I'm cognizant that we are at almost at 1:40, and I'm sure our attendees have things going on as well. I want to ask you, because some of the work that I'm doing in communications and marketing is around research of our primary audiences. So instructional leaders, CIOs, all of the people that support those types of roles in a school district. What we know about those roles is that they might be interested in interoperability. They might have heard about it from somewhere like CoSN, or somewhere they heard somebody speaking about it, or it might be this thing, data standards often off there, over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But making it relevant to like the daily operation of a school district can be a bit of a challenge for these key audience types. We know that
Mm-hmm.
because it becomes sometimes, unfortunately, an afterthought, because there is some work. There's a bit of a journey you have to go through to get to the solution part, to solve
Mm-hmm.
some big problems with data, but you have to take a step back in order to see that. So what we've really learned is that there's an awareness barrier, and that's part of why we do webinars with CoSN and work with CoSN a whole bunch. Um, there's some things to understand, and then there's, you got to get some other folks on board. You've got to kind of assemble a bit of a team, create kind of a culture of data. So there is some change that needs to happen if a
Mm-hmm.
school district is really going to take advantage of data and using data efficiently and effectively to solve some of these big challenges and over the long term, right? Like my school district, we have a family portal, but it's not awesome. So how do we think about getting it better, right? For everybody that can, you take the time that can't take the time to learn a new system, things like that. But where would you tell people to go
Mm-hmm.
to learn more about EdFi? If they could just carve out a couple days, I'm leading you to the answer. They could carve out a couple days, a couple hours in the near future, and maybe down in the fall, to take some time out to learn what they need to learn to get going with EdFi and to really, use the power of interoperability to change some lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said.
What would you say?
Oh, just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this event, this virtual event, Exchange Live, that's coming up very shortly, right? In a month, just a little bit less than a month. Um, it's a low cost, high value way. And the idea here is to open the door to a lot of folks to come with a team, right? We talked earlier about the power
Yeah.
of pairing your technology with your instructional leadership or those teams. This is a super event for doing that, where a lot of the content and a lot of the stories that are shared there are from folks in the field across the community talking about what worked, what was challenging that people don't have to repeat, right? Kind of like learn from the lessons of others on both the successes and the challenges, but also what can be replicated, what can be reused, what can save you time and accelerate your efforts that you can just like rocket through compared to the first early adopters on some of those things. So we did one of these last year that was really well attended and very rich. I mean, and it was real talk too. It was a lot of focus on what was tough in the pandemic, the data pain points that had come up that were just visceral and real for people, and what they did about it, or what they were doing about it, what held promise. And so I am a big fan. I'm a little biased, but it would be a super event. And you've even got a discount code for CoSN members who are with us here to come join us, right, Caroline?
Yeah. So, right. This is just, it's a couple hours of your time over June 9th, June 10th. So hopefully school will be out and you can dedicate a little bit of time, carve out some time for us. It's a 100% virtual event. So you're logging on and it's just with this $10 off coupon code, it's just $25. We'll send you a great shirt and some other swag items. You'll be able to log on and have complete access to all the sessions, but they are all real live sessions. It's not all pre-recorded. You are speaking with the experts. So like folks up in Indiana school districts that have done this, folks in Arizona, state education department, what they've been doing with Ed5, folks in Florida, California, school districts all over the country, their highs, their lows, their aha moments, their successes, and they're sharing that with the community, as well as our own staff is doing some almost like training sessions, almost like a boot camp. Like, we're going to help you get up and running on this. We're going to repeat the session that Sean and I just did here in some version. There's a lot of information. And so if you are on this call, you want to know more, you think this is going to be a great thing for your school district, go ahead and create an account like Sean showed you from our website, but then definitely plan on attending Exchange Live. And then we are planning to have an in-person meeting, which is our giant summit with, in the past, we've had 500 in-person people. We're going to do a hybrid version of it this year in the fall in Austin. So stay tuned for that. Another reason why you definitely want to get on our mailing list, because we'd love to tell you more about all the things that we have put in place to help school districts like yours be successful with data. So we have a couple questions from the chat. Let's see, Drew, what licensing version of Power BI would we need to get?
Oh, Drew, good
That's
question.
a very specific question, but I don't know if we can answer it here, but we can definitely follow up.
That's a good question, Drew. You know what? Can you pop your email address into the chat and I'll make sure to get that answer back to you.
Okay, yeah, and we can also grab the chat log too. Oh, we've got it. Awesome.
I've got folks on the team that I know will know that right off the top of their head, but I'm not sure. I'll find out for you though.
Thank you, Drew, for bringing the brave person to jump up and ask a question. Yeah, so how do you get started? We've talked about some different ways. Sean has showed you that there's some solutions that are step by step. We've tried to take all the guesswork out of it. But how to get started, right? First thing is to create that account. Lean on us. Yeah, Sean is always available. Although the rest of the team is like, don't give your email out anymore. You're too busy. But Sean's there for you. All of our teammates on their email addresses are on our website under Meet the Team. So you can literally email any of us, our info box. But then really just to dig into those starter kits and really look through all of that. And also something that Sean mentioned and I'll echo is to don't go don't code this alone, right? If you're like the IT person in your school district, or you're supporting the CIO and you're like, hey, we need to do this, grab some other folks, create a dream team. We talk about that a lot. Get the instructional leader. And if you're an instructional leader, get the IT person, and y'all create that dream team, because not only do you need to have the data to like the bits and bytes, the technology, to all the magic that makes all of that work, but you also need to have that perspective of an instructional leader that can put it all in context and then go and show, you know, the superintendent or other folks within your organization to say, like, this is really, like, the technology and the data is one thing, but when we put it to use in a really important way, this can change a lot of lives. So I'll leave you with that. I don't know, Sean, any closing thoughts?
I think that's well said. We should wrap there, but just a reminder that we'll post the recording
Yeah.
up on the event site, and so this information will be in there. And hopefully, I put all the URLs in to where you can get to those things directly. But if not, just ping me with that email address, despite what Caroline says. I'll help you. And we also have implementation support kinds of resources that can help guide you to with, you know, sort of like solution architecture questions or other things that you want to dig into.
Yeah. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you, everyone. This concludes the webinar. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks all. Appreciate you.